Good morning and happy Friday, Honors Language Arts. I hope you guys are getting ready for a fun weekend, and I hope you're giving your very best already to your sub this morning. Today you guys are going to be taking your reading assessment on evaluating argument. So you're going to take a close look at an article, at an author's claims, reasoning, evidence, bias, and stereotyping, and maybe any other choices that the author is making to distinguish their argument from others. Your desk should be cleared right now of everything except a pen or a pencil, 3 highlighters, markers, pens, pencils, whatever you guys decide on. The article about clean eating, your rubric, which has an organizer on the back of it, and the response page, which has a bunch of lines on it. Those should be the only things on your desk. I'm going to walk you guys through what this is going to look like this morning. We have already practiced this multiple times. We did a practice that you will see looks very, very similar to what you have in front of you today. So I hope you guys are feeling confident and ready for this. First thing I want you to take a look at is the actual reading assessment. You guys have some very specific directions that should answer any questions you're asking yourself. You really have 3 specific tasks this morning for your reading assessment. The first thing that you're going to do is take a look at the New York Times article about clean eating, whether or not that is something that we should be doing. And as you guys read through that, I want you to annotate it using 3 different colors for the author's claim, the author's reasoning, and the author's evidence. So you should have 3 different colors for those 3 different things. On top of that, using your pen or your pencil, I also want you to mark any places that you see author bias, the author stereotyping, the author using extra examples, humor, whatever it may be, anything else the author is doing to distinguish his or her argument. So that is step 1. You're actually going to annotate your article. Yes, that is actually going to be graded. So the article you guys should have out in front of you as well. It's titled Relax, You Don't Need to Eat Clean. It is a 2-page article. Make sure you read through the entire thing. You need to be marking the author's developing claim, the author's different reasons, and the evidence that the author uses to support those reasons. In addition, I should be able to see some notes on any bias or stereotyping or humor, whatever else you want to mark it up. This is a good place to show your thinking as you're reading through the article. Your second step today is taking a look at the argument. I know it says choose one of the arguments. I'm not going to have you guys read 2, so you're just going to focus on that argument, and you're going to complete the graphic organizer on the back of this page. So if you flip this over and take a look at the back, it literally walks you through identifying the author's claims, different reasons, different pieces of evidence, as well as any bias or stereotyping. Once you've read through the entire article, I want you to put the author's claim in your own words. What is the main point? What is the so what of this article? Then you're going to move on to the author's reasoning. There may be more than 3 reasons in this article. You only need to outline 3. So I want you to tell me, what is reason number 1? You're going to write that out in this space. And then I want you to circle, is that a strong or a weak reason? Then I want you to give me an example of that reason in the text and then explain, how is that strong or weak? Is it logical? Is it relevant? Does it make sense? Does it connect to the claim? All of those things are there to consider for your reasons. Then you're going to move on to the evidence that supports that reason. So reason number 1 and evidence number 1 should connect. These 2 things should be in support of each other. I want you to tell me, is the evidence for that reason strong or weak? I want you to give me an example from the text, and I want you to explain that example. How is it strong or how is it weak? Is there enough evidence? Is it relevant evidence? Is it credible evidence? Is the source mentioned? All of those questions that we look at when we are evaluating evidence. Notice that for each one of these steps, you're basically acing your answer, giving me A, your answer, C, a citation, and E, explaining that example that you chose. The last part of this, if you can find one example of bias or one example of stereotyping, it might be positive or negative bias. So I want you to tell me, is it strong or is it weak? And then explain, how does that bias or that stereotyping or that humor strengthen or weaken the author's argument? This is your second step of your reading assessment today is completing that graphic organizer. The last and most important step, the step that you should be spending the most time on today, is actually evaluating the argument. If you read number 3, evaluate the effectiveness of the author's argument. Is the author's claim, reasoning, and use of evidence strong or weak? Explain why or why not using textual evidence to support your ideas. Lastly, explain any instances in which the author shows bias or stereotyping. I have further outlined that for you. If you take a look at your response page, I've outlined some more specific questions that you should be sure to answer in your response. This is a mini essay. It's not just one paragraph, but it's not a full 5-paragraph essay. I simply want to know, is the argument strong or weak? As you explain whether the argument is strong or whether the argument is weak, you should be addressing the reasoning. Is it strong or weak? The use of evidence, is it strong or weak? Any bias, any stereotyping, does this strengthen or weaken the argument? And last but not least, is there anything else the author does, any other author choices that makes their argument more unique or stronger or weaker, whatever it may be? You guys have 2 pages to respond to those questions. I think that is an appropriate space for a thorough answer. If you need extra space, as always, take out a lined piece of paper and add on to your answer. Last thing I want to show you guys is your rubric, like we looked at the other day. The main part of this is evaluating an author's argument. Are you explaining not only if the argument is strong or weak, but how or why it's strong or weak? What makes it that way? Part of your grade is also dependent on, can you find bias? Can you find stereotyping that influences the author in one way or another, maybe a positive or a negative way? And then last but not least, author purpose. Can you find any other author choices that show the author's personal or maybe professional perspective or purpose behind their argument? Once you guys complete all 3 of these steps, you're going to turn in all 3 of the papers, the annotated article, the organizer on the back of this page, as well as your response sheet. All 3 of those things need to be turned into your sub. You can staple them together, you can turn them in separately. Just make sure your name is on all 3 of those papers. If you have some extra time when you're done today, you guys have Lit Circle titles available to you. There is a question or an assignment on Canvas that I want you to fill out. You guys have a bunch of different titles available to you. I want to know your top 3 choices of book titles and your top 3 choices of other people in this classroom that you would like to work with. We're going to do a Lit Circle group where you guys are going to be reading and discussing and putting together a small project with a group based on the titles that you choose. So in that question on Canvas, which you guys can find it on Canvas, it's going to ask you, what are your top 3 titles and who are the top 3 people in class that you would like to work with on this? I highly suggest basing it off of the book. You need to read the book to do the project, but I do want to get some names from you guys of who you'd like to work with for this next project. Again, it might not be something that's set in stone. Just because you give me a name does not mean I'm going to put you with those names, but I'd like to know your preferences as always. Once you finish the assessment and finish that question in Canvas, you can use the rest of class time for some free reading today. I know it's been a while since you guys have had that. So please enjoy your Friday. Do the best that you possibly can on your reading assessment. Remember to show me your thinking. We've practiced evaluating argument in a lot of different ways this quarter. This one just looks a lot more formal and a lot more official than the way we normally do it. Just show me your thinking. Make sure you answer all parts of the question. And good luck. You guys are going to do awesome on this. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week.